Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Hey, welcome to the podcast. We're glad you're here, or maybe you're watching on YouTube. You could do either, and that's good. I'm Brian Beatty. I'm here with our CEO, Bruce Mann from Kingdomize Global, and we have a great discussion for you today because we want to talk about something that we've developed to really help you. We've told you before, our goal is to come alongside you, to be tour guides, not travel agents, to bring real tools, real ideas, real experience to make your venture, kingdom venture, really, really successful for you and help Jesus bring his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And so that's what we want to do. That's what we want to talk about today. Bruce, we've talked about in the last few weeks, the few of us have got together, you and I and Bruce and Ian, we've got together as the primary founders of Kingdomize Global. And we've talked about what we are. What does it mean to have God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven? We talked about our why, the big why about Isaiah prophesying the kingdom, Jesus just talking about the kingdom and you highlighting it and getting it in your life. And then the starting with the end in mind being the idea that one day it's going to be the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ. So to jump into the discussion today, before we just jump into what does a 3-year roadmap look like for a company or a group, you start with some foundational pieces that I think are really important that talk about the primary leader, the primary leaders of a company. So let's hit that there. And what is the piece that's really important before we start talking about some of the processes?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the real pivotal piece, the pin in the hinge, so to speak, is the fact that the kingdom company leader moves from an ownership perspective to a stewardship perspective. And that in kind of conventional thinking, that might seem like a step backwards, right? I'm no longer the owner, I'm just serving something, I'm serving somebody. And because the world is so intent on ownership and control and being the top dog and that sort of thing. But in the kingdom conversation, particularly around business, being a steward is actually a higher calling. You're called to serve a master, called to serve somebody and protect and support and work towards their interests, not your own. And so it's a major shift in thinking that really is at the very base of everything that we talk about when it comes to seeing God's kingdom extended. In this case, we're talking about in business. And I'll just preface that or add to that. This may be the biggest challenge of our lives. Letting go of something to serve something else, saying no to something so we can say yes to something else.
It really is important and hard, as you just said, because most people that have, let's say they're leading a business, so they've spent the time, they've done the work, it's been amazing, or a church, whatever, they're strong leaders. And so they've, to some degree, and they're self-made in some degree, but now we're backing up and saying, well, maybe you're not self-made. Maybe the kingdom is more engaged than that. And it's really important to come with that, again, that lens of I'm managing it. And the way I look at it maybe is helpful is maybe we step into one of Jesus' parables where, you've talked often about the fact that, reading the Gospels with that highlighter to see what Jesus was talking about Kingdomize, or with Kingdomize, let's say, gave you that lens. But if you can step into one of those parables where Jesus is saying he's the owner of all this stuff, and we get a talent or we get some seed,
Yeah,
I found that that's been helpful for me.
it is. And you know what? There really is this, once you get your head around the fact that being a steward to God's resources is a higher calling than being the owner of your own. Like that's where the world changes for you. Um, and we don't have time to go into it today, but really, when you think about it, stewards don't serve possessions. Owners serve possessions. Stewards serve masters. And in
Yeah.
this case, for us, it's God. Stewards, and I love this to kind of use the parable illustration, enter into the joy of
Yeah.
their master, right? Stewards only know the joy, or owners only know the joy of their possessions, which are temporal and can be easily taken from you. A steward is a much stronger position, a much more secure position, particularly when you're a steward of the God of the universe.
Yeah. So I want to throw something in here now that a friend of ours, Glenn Diaz, talks about going
Yeah.
from world class, having a great world class company. And he says there's a higher model than that. He's saying the higher model is that kingdom class. And I would
Yes.
suggest, as you've just said, that this understanding of ownership to stewardship is a big part of that shift. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Because you can't function and you can't lead a kingdom company without that stewardship paradigm that you're functioning out of.
Yeah, and
It's incongruent to think you can own it and also serve the master who really owns it.
yeah, and I've heard you use, Bruce. You often have used Philippians 2 when you
Yeah.
start this discussion. Can you kind of break that down a little bit? The Philippians 2 model that you've used before, because it's really good.
About your meaning about just that we even Jesus wasn't called to own.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
came to serve,
yeah,
right? And so if Jesus came as the steward of a mission, as the steward of God's plan and purpose, how much more are we called into
yeah.
that role, right?
A
And
hundred.
because of that, he's elevated to the highest. But there is, it's not just it's comprehensive in that sense. I think we can get the big picture on that.
No, I love that. And that's where I was heading. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. So, okay, so we're gonna always, just so you're aware, as you're listening, we're always going to connect our discussions about kingdom lens and kingdom understanding, kingdom class, back to your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And we wouldn't necessarily differentiate between whether you're a business person or you're involved in politics or education or a pastor, that the why has to have that kingdom component. Why am I doing that? And we would always point back to that. So we just want to keep that in front of you as well. So let's go into this, Bruce. We're going to talk about kingdom class companies. We're going to talk about this roadmap. So just before we talk about what a kingdom company is, maybe you can help me differentiate between maybe what it's not. Like, what are some of those markers that would say, hey, I'm a Christian doing business? Do I have a kingdom company? Let's start with some of what maybe it isn't, and then I want to
sure.
jump into what it is.
Well, I think we would typically think that if I'm a Christian and I own a business, I have a Christian business. Not the case. I mean, you may run your company ethically. You may be kind to your employees. You should be. There's nothing wrong with that. That's obviously the way it should be. But it would be an oversimplification to think that because a Christian owns a company or manages a company, that it's a Christian company,
Our kingdom company.
a kingdom company. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we would say is that, it's not just that this commercial endeavor is not just simply become Christian because it's led by a Christian. What it needs to do to become a kingdom company is actually demonstrate submission to the lordship of Jesus Christ in all aspects of the business operations and decision making. That's different. That's comprehensive. And so that will differentiate between just simply a Christian who owns a business and a business that actually is participating in extending God's kingdom in the world.
Awesome. Anything else? Anything else you add regarding what it's maybe not?
Yeah, a couple more things. One is sometimes we think of a business or a commercial endeavor can make a lot of money that can be given to what we might call conventional Christian ministry. We hear the term often, business as mission. And I get the understanding of that, why we would use that term, but I would suggest that the better understanding of that is business is mission. If I'm a business owner, my calling is just as valid as the pastor who leads my church.
Yeah.
Because my calling is from the same master.
Yeah.
If you're using the stewardship thing, right? And so my business is not just simply something I own that generates money that I give to other people to use to fulfill their vision or what they think is, the vision that God's given them. I actually have a vehicle as a leader of a business to impact my vendors, my staff, my customers, my community for God's kingdom in powerful ways. And in some respects, unique and very significant ways that transcend conventional thinking. Because, when a business decides to be transformative in its impact and all the spheres of influence it has, that can have huge implications that make powerful impact particularly in their local community.
Yeah, I love that differentiation you said, Bruce, that business is mission, and that breaks down, as you said, that there's no sacred secular callings. If Jesus calls you to it, it makes it sacred, which means we are on we have that mission. It is the mission, and that's such a great distinction. Really, really good. Yeah. Anything else before we move on?
Well, just the last one is, and I would say Christian company is not or a kingdom company is not one that just sort of creates this cocoon. I only deal with other believers, other Christians. There is, we have these groups and these, Christian buying networks and all that. I don't think that's necessarily an expression of God's kingdom, right? We as Christian leaders should freely engage in the world's, the world around us in order to bring that transformative influence into places where it's not going to go on its own, right? We need to actually bring it. And so I think we need to reject this idea of the Christian cocoon that we get inside and we just have all these internal dealings and all these internal transactions. Our calling is to get out there and make a difference and make an impact.
Yeah.
Be creative, come up with ideas that change our communities and create great products that make a difference in people's lives. So those are the things that it's not, right?
Got it. So those that already have the salt and light may not need more salt and light. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe not. No.
Maybe that was meant for other people. No, that's really good. Okay, well, that's really good distinction, and I'm sure there's more to that, but we don't want to land there. We do want to talk about what is a kingdom company. Like, there's going to be elements, and it's going to be a huge list, I'm sure. But just kind of wet our whistle on what does that mean? What does a kingdom company look like? What are the elements?
Well, so I would say, Brian, this is really an important conversation because how we define a kingdom company is going to obviously have a big impact on our ability to evaluate if we are or are not a kingdom company. And so we've talked about what a kingdom company is not. Well, what if that's not, it's not? Well, what is it? And so this is not an exhaustive list, but I think it hits the big buckets. And I'll go through them fairly quickly and just try to unpack this. First of all, a kingdom company has to have a solid fiscal productivity and sustainability. And as any business would, it's a commercial endeavor. And if you're not making a profit, well, you're not going to be in business for very long, right? So it has to have solid fiscal management and sustainability. It needs to have kingdom aligned values and an organizational culture that reflects to the greatest degree it can the culture of heaven.
Mm.
Now we'll unpack that a little more maybe in the future, but that may sound like a pretty high goal, but I think it's something we can begin to understand. Thirdly, it needs, and this is one that may be a bit of a hot button, but it needs to be proactively environmentally responsible. And when I use the word proactively, because we I know there's a lot of debate and a lot of tension around this idea of environmentalism and it taken to extremes and all kinds of different, but as someone who's called to be a steward, and this is all of us who follow Jesus, who are followers of Jesus, called to be stewards of the creation that God has given us. We can't just simply respond to the legal requirements that the world kind of has decided these are the things. We actually have to be proactive and think about the environment, and is our business impacting the environment positively or negatively? Is it adding back in or is it taking out and leaving a hole? So that's an important part that may create a little, make the hairs in the back of the neck of some people rise, but we can talk through that one in more detail at some point. Fourthly, it needs to, and we've already discussed this, the leadership needs to function from a stewardship disposition in all areas of operation. And we've talked already about that. We unpacked that a little bit already. I would say one of the earmarks or one of the trademarks of a kingdom company is that this is an organizational culture where innovation and creativity flow freely in structure, in products, and in services. We don't have the market cornered on creativity, but we do have a direct line to the most creative power in the universe, and so there should be some creative ideas coming from that. Meaning, obviously, the Holy Spirit guiding us. Two other parts here to just consider. One, evaluation and response to the kind of key performance indicators needs to include more than the fiscal results. And this is where we talk about a multi-column balance sheet. The fiscal results are important. We've already identified that, but there are other measurements, other metrics, other ways of measuring whether or not we are actually having a kingdom impact. And those would, things such as the environment, which we've already identified, our social impact, our community impact, our relational life within the company, all these elements that are part of measuring and evaluating what we're doing as a company. And the last piece is maybe obvious, but maybe not so obvious. Profits have to be strategically used to appropriately benefit all the stakeholders. And the stakeholders are everyone who has an impact, is impacted by our company: vendors, customers, staff, the community, ourselves as leaders, and they need to be used and distributed in a way to be used as a catalyst for God's global redemptive transformational mission, because that's what the kingdom's about. And if we're a kingdom company, we're going to be about the things that the kingdom's about.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
there.
This is really, really good. And so we've just taken a good chunk of time to set up coming into what we want to talk about today, which is the roadmap. So as Kingdomize, we've taken an extraordinary amount of time to come up with a plan to really help you that are listening, to help you be really, really successful. Our goal is, we feel like we're successful if you're successful. And so, Bruce, you've suggested, or we're suggesting, that a bullseye on this might be a 3-year window. I'd rather do this in a weekend. I'm an owner, I'm a pastor, I'm a business leader. I would rather go to a weekend retreat and get all this information and come back and use it. What's with before we talk about what we're going to do in 3 years, what's with the 3 years? Like, what's going on?
Well, I know a really great leader who took 3 years with 12 men and still didn't accomplish everything that needed to be accomplished.
So you're
His
talking about
name,
Jesus, right? You
his name is Jesus.
all right? Just didn't want to get
He
rid of it.
he felt he needed 3 years to properly bring the DNA of the kingdom into this group of very, very complex and multifaceted group of leaders. And I'm maybe being a little facetious, but I think you get what my point here is, that the transformation of the culture of the business, the primary leaders of the business practices, and the evaluation of the outcomes. You can't do that in a weekend. Um, we're talking about a sometimes deeply entrenched culture that has to be transitioned, moved. Leaders who need to begin to not just simply think differently because someone challenges them with a question, but begins to become part of who they are. Right? That I'm going to spend. If I live to be 80, I will have spent 80 years becoming more like Jesus. In fact, maybe not quite that many. From the time I just chose that I wanted, that would be the calling on my life, and I'm not going to get there. So I'm exaggerating, but this is a process that needs time. There are components to it which we'll look at shortly, that just simply take time to unpack and unfold and transition. And so we really believe that it takes the 3 year window is, again, we kind of have some logic and some thinking behind that, but the point being it takes time.
Yeah, yeah. I think I relate this to the dialogue in all the spheres. Like it's an individual gets a vision. They've seen kingdom expressed somewhere else, so it hits them individually. Then it affects their family. Then it affects their company. Like it's those concentric circles, and that all doesn't happen, as you say. That doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen on a weekend. It's not a few months. It is a lifetime process. But we've put some processes together that
Yeah.
that will help. And the phrase you use that I love is to help people become cultural architects. So talk about that, and then we're going to go walk into what that can look like in a company. Talk about cultural architects, and then we'll do that.
Yeah. So I'll step back for a minute to just highlight some imagery. So we've talked about a roadmap, right? We all know what a roadmap is. We don't use them as much anymore, but hopefully everyone still knows what a roadmap is. We could use the GPS, I guess, illustration, but a roadmap provides details on how to get from point A to point B. Shows you the roads to take, the directions to take, the turns to make, what you're going to encounter, that type of thing. Um, Backing up from there, we've used it on at times the idea of a compass, right? A compass points you in the right direction, and knowing the direction you're going doesn't give you any information about what you're going to encounter, right? So again, this idea of the roadmap, the 3 year window, means you may know where you want to get to, or you may think you know where you want to get to, but you have no idea what you're going to encounter to get there. And so it takes time, and any journey that you're going to make is going to take time. And so again, just to emphasize that idea of needing the time to actually work through. And so that's where the idea of a cultural architect comes in, because every company has a culture. It's the process, it's the filter, the perceptual filter that the leaders, the staff use to make decisions. And that doesn't change overnight. And even you may have a strong passion to see a change happen, but sometimes things are so deeply entrenched in our thinking that we catch ourselves falling back into old patterns, or struggles come, or there's challenges, and we fall back into ways of functioning that we used to. And to see this through, to make the journey, because this not get on a plane, take off, 3 years later you're going to land. It's a journey. It's one foot in front of the other over a period of time, and it's going to take some perseverance, and you're going to get tired. There'll be things. Again, we see that in life, and we see that in the Gospels. It wasn't an easy pathway, but it was certainly a valuable and a rewarding pathway, and that's probably the thing that we need to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you distinguish between the compass. We know where we're going, but the roadmap, how to get there. I love
Yeah.
your dialogue that you have often about that we're tour guides, not travel agents. We talk about that a lot, where it's like we could give you the ticket to get on the plane to go on your journey, but we've got people in our company and those that we're connected to that they've already been on this journey, and so we want to walk beside you to get there. So let's jump into this discussion specifically about the roadmap. So
Okay.
I'm a guy listening today. I'm a business owner. Maybe I've connected with you for a couple of coaching sessions. I like you, or I've heard what you've done online. I've seen you've done something for my business, my buddy's business, and I'm going, yeah, I need something more comprehensive. What should I expect? Like you're going to show up and give me a bunch of stuff to do. What should I expect over the next few months, next couple of years? What should I expect?
Well, again, using the illustration of a journey and taking a map, we would begin the process by doing a deep dive, a deep evaluation of where you are currently at as a business, as a company. Not just simply your products and services or whatever it happens to be that your company is, but your leadership team, your key executives, yourself. We do this um, to kind of be able to craft a uniquely tailored roadmap for each business, and because every business obviously is different, every leader's different, the industry they're in, the market they serve will be different. So the beginning part is evaluation. From there, we want to begin to help develop the guiding documents that will kind of give us direction as we move forward, to really kind of launch things out. And what we typically would do is actually have what we would call an accelerator event, where we launch this journey, this that we've created the map. We launch the journey, but we do it by doing some preparation, like you would do for any long journey. Um, it may not be physical exercise, but there may be some relational and thinking exercises that need to take place in order to prepare someone to start moving in the direction that they're going. And most of these obviously are related to the internal workings of the business, but there may be some hard decisions that business has to make about, is what we're doing really aligned with God's purposes, and are there areas of our business that are in the gray zone, or maybe we can do more. So there's a whole host of evaluations that need to take place in order to bring kind of direction to this process.
So you're going to start with assessments. You're going to do this accelerator launch. So how long is that? What does that look like? This accelerator, what does that look like?
Well, that's usually done as over it's a short-term event, probably 2 days, but obviously with some preliminary evaluation and purposes that are, we work through. We In addition to this, we will craft a personal development roadmap for the primary leader. Obviously, the primary leader is a pivotal key person in the whole process. If they're not invested in this, it's going to be hard for to move it forward. If it's just a nice idea they like, but they're not really engaged, that's not going to work, right? So, if so, there's a personal development pathway for the primary leader, who now is part of the process of moving things forward. And then coming off of the accelerator, part of that process is actually to determine the talent needs of the business, and are there gaps that have to be filled, and what is the leadership development pathway that's in place to bring maybe emerging leaders, younger leaders up into places of significance over the course of the development pathway. So as I said, there's a number of components that have to be considered, in making sure that not only is the pathway achievable, but it's comprehensive. and that will allows us then to launch in with confidence and some real intentionality
Yeah.
um, for the period of time that we're functioning as with the roadmap.
Yeah, so I want to just pause there for a minute. So we've talked about assessments, the accelerator, coaching and mentoring with key leaders, and you hit a couple times the primary leader. And I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we nail this one
Okay.
because how important is it that the primary leader, the owner, or primary steward, if you will, how important is that person in this process?
Well, it's absolutely pivotal and fundamental to seeing it happen, right? That I mean, we know that the leader sets the tone and is the one who will be the champion of this and needs to be the champion of this. It's not. This is not a task that you can, you know, delegate to somebody and say, "Let me know when it's done." The primary leader has to participate in the process. We'll go back and use our example of Jesus and the disciples. I mean, Jesus, he was there. He was participating. He was part of the debrief. He was part of the encouragement. He was part of the challenging. He was getting his hands dirty with the disciples at the same time, and so it's absolutely fundamental that the primary leader leads the charge, so to speak, and is guiding the part of the guiding process of this.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I just want to make sure that that was heard well.
Yep.
So we've got assessments, the accelerator, we've got the coaching and mentoring that's happening. You've got tools and processes you're going to do with all of these things. We're going to look at emergent leaders. Let's go to the next one that I think is really important that when I spend a little bit of time on, and that's the guiding documents. You hit this earlier on the way through, but let's talk
Yeah.
specifically about the guiding documents you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, most companies will have a mission statement. They'll have a vision statement. They may have even a set of company values, and those may be you know perfectly fine as part of this process, or they may need some realignment. Um, so we've talked about the idea of different metrics that we would, you know, it, values are typically, an expression of what we value, right? And if finances, if profitability is the highest value, well, that's going to help us use as a filter to apply the values that we see in our company. But if there are other values that are equally important, that's going to guide how resources are spent, what we spend time on. And I say this with some caution because I don't want to give the impression that we're giving everything away. But a kingdom company um, needs to be profitable in all of its areas of operation, not just fiscally. And so you may find that you give up some profitability on this column to gain it on this column. You invest your resources differently. So the metrics used and the both in terms of evaluation and decision making are going to be different in a kingdom environment, a kingdom company, and that's done to honor the master, and we do it because we're stewards of his interests, not our own.
Yeah.
And so again, this is where the primary leader becomes so important. The guiding documents help keep us on course, and articulates the vision, the mission, the values that reflect this kingdom purpose and agenda. One of the things I love to work on with companies, I use the expression as a cultural compass. We've used the idea of a compass already. Cultural compasses are ways of expressing the values in tangible contexts. So it's one thing to say as a company value, we value um, honesty, or we value integrity, or we value that. But how do we live that out? And the cultural compass takes those ideas and actually expresses them in ways that are help the staff, the all of the stakeholders understand what does that mean in the context of this company. And it's a really valuable tool from that standpoint. And so these are the things that we help to develop and work on with each company, and it's unique to each company, but it really does create a solid foundation to move forward from.
Yeah. So I love all of that. I love all the idea that we're going to look at their, either help them create a mission, vision, and value statements, or help them possibly recraft them to look
Yeah,
more kingdom, possibly. But one of the other things you said on the way by, Bruce, was um, we're going to take it from this column to this column.
yeah.
So what I hear you saying is that it's just not like, well, we're making money, so we're a kingdom company. Like, explain that a bit more. And I know you've got a tool that you use for that as well. So let's go into that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Well, most business owners, business stewards, see, my language is even challenged, is they understand the balance sheet, right? It tells you your assets and your liabilities, gives you an understanding of where you're at, your financial picture. Valuable tool, absolutely necessary. But the financial position of the company is not the only metric that gives you a sense of success or an understanding. Are you successful? Um, there are other what we would call columns to that balance sheet, and the aggregate impact of all the columns really tells you: is this a kingdom company? Is this company profitable in the context of God's kingdom?
Yeah.
And so, not only does the fiscal column have to be positive, and you know, sustainable, positive, and profitable, but you need to have a positive relational column. What are the relationships like in the primary leaders, the executive team, the staff? What are the what's the environmental balance sheet for the company? Are we making lots of money but we're destroying the environment? Are we making lots of money but selling a product that is actually taking people away from a potentially deeper understanding of life and the God of the universe? There's the spiritual balance sheet. What are the outcomes of the relationships that we've already talked about? Um, there could be other columns depending on the industry and the and the company that we want to consider. And so each company will have a unique balance sheet. There'll be some common balance columns, items, but there'll be others that may be unique, or higher importance than others. So the multi-column balance sheet really is a way of us gauging the overall impact of the company. And like I said, if the aggregate of all those columns shows positive, then we can begin to say we're making a difference in all of these areas in a positive way. Or if it shows one that's in a strong deficit, then we need to look and say, well, how do we change that? How do we make a difference in that area? It's just a way of guiding the process that gives us a metric. And as I said, the metrics are are both common and unique at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I years ago, probably 20 years ago now, when I was planning my church and I was starting a business, I wrote a byline and it said, the bottom line is about more than just numbers. And I think that's what
Yeah,
we're saying here. Like
yeah,
we want people to make a lot of money. Like if you have a business and it's a kingdom business, we want you to be incredibly wealthy for the kingdom. But it's the
yeah,
bottom line isn't just about those numbers, those fiscal numbers. Well,
yeah.
that's awesome. And so I'm starting to see why this is more than a weekend, this discussion. So a few more things on this roadmap. Then let's wrap these last few up as well. So we've talked about all these things. We've talked about the assessments, the accelerator, the coaching and mentoring emerging leaders, guiding documents. Uh, we've got some people that we work with that aren't just Kingdomize, but we work with some other people as well. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's dive into that a bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll touch on two areas in particular. So we or three. Let me back up. You've already mentioned coaching. One of the things that we feel is really valuable and important, and this comes under the category of tour guides, not travel agents. where the primary leader and or leaders have ongoing coaching sessions to help answer questions, process difficulties and challenges. That's an ongoing part through the entire journey, and a really valuable part of just helping the adjustments. Because let me just add to that quickly. One of we're talking about the multi-column balance sheet. Well, one of the columns is family health, right? If you have a successful business, but your family's being destroyed because of the weight you're carrying, the time you're working, that's not a kingdom business. That's not a kingdom company, because that's not something that brings honor to God, and it's certainly not going to help you in the long run. So the coaching and mentoring piece is really to help create a healthy environment. And that leads me into one of the other really significant pieces of the roadmap, and that is developing clear strategic planning, but more importantly, strategic execution processes where we put in place, and this is something that would help any company, but in the context of someone pursuing a kingdom expression of the company, this is absolutely fundamental, because great planning is wonderful, but if you don't execute, it's nothing. It's just a book on a shelf, a binder on a shelf with words. And so all of the strategic planning and creating and developing a culture of strategic execution is a big part, because at the end of the day, you don't want to just be people looking, oh yeah, it's a nice group of people, they're nice. You want a highly efficient, functioning business that people want to work with because you do such a great job and you provide such great products and services. And this is a big part of it. We have some unique proprietary tools that we apply to really help distill out of your your team the strategic initiatives that have the highest probability of execution and success, that lead you to be and deal with any shortcomings that allows you to continue to grow and develop. In addition to that, somewhat separate but all part of it, is we want to bring in some unique assessment tools on a personal level for your teams that really helps to aid in the communication and working environment between your primary leaders. And so one of the ones we use is called life languages. And it's a great tool to help people understand what is it, how do they communicate, how do they engage with the world around them, we unpack that so that your team actually has a framework for communication, for synergistic collaborative work environments and that type of thing. So as much as what we're talking about is a spirit, as an expression of a spiritual reality of us being stewards of God's resources, one of the things we really want to bring is some really effective tools to help you function at a very high level from a business execution standpoint. And that's where excuse me, the strategic strategy and execution, things like the life language assessments, the coaching and mentoring all come in and are part of that, rounding it out.
Yeah. Wow, this is really, really good, Bruce. I love how this is developed and how it's working for companies already. And so this sounds really good. I can see why it's not a weekend. And my understanding is, as Kingdomize, we're wonderful people, so we come in and do this all for free. Is that right? Is that right?
Well, no,
Oh
that
no.
is not correct. Because we're a business as well. We're applying some of these same principles and tools to our own operations, because we are stewards of this initiative to see, God's people in whatever sphere of influence. We're talking business today, but it could be government, could be education, could be arts and media, could be, we want to see the same thing in families and churches. No, it's not free. Um, and but I would put it in the category, and this, I think you'll understand this. There are things that we look at and we say, well, that's a cost. Or there are things we look at and go, no, I'm investing. This is actually going to have a payback. There's going to be fruit out of this. There's going to be, productivity out of this. And I would put this in that category It's an investment in yourself, in your team, in the business's products and services to allow you to function at the highest level with the greatest productivity that's comprehensive. And it's as it comes under the category of investment rather than cost. And we love to be able to share with people what we believe what we're providing is done at a very reasonable rate, but not free. But ultimately, it's something that should not only pay for itself, but bring kingdom impact in a way that hopefully will advance God's kingdom in your community and in your business, which
Yeah.
you can't put a price tag on.
Yeah. Total disclosure, I knew the answer to that before I asked it. So I think we've talked really well about all this stuff, and clearly there's a deeper dive on all of it that
Yeah.
again, I'm strongly encouraging people to reach out to get a hold of us and have these dialogues. But I want to just wrap up, or Bruce, I want you to wrap up really on that last point you just mentioned. And as Kingdomize, we would call this one of maybe our primary USP is comprehensiveness.
Yeah.
That so?
Yeah.
So maybe just round this out with that discussion about why we consider that such.
Yeah. I mean, probably anyone who has a business has maybe dealt with a consultant or someone who's come in to do training about around a particular area. It might be risk management, it might be team dynamics, it could be anything. And those are all great. They have some value. They can produce some good results. But our we really felt like what we need to put together was something that was comprehensive. Another reason why it's not just a weekend, and the reason for that is that the kingdom of God is actually multifaceted, and every business functions on many different levels in many different ways. And so to have a fully transformational experience in the business towards kingdom impact and influence, we needed to touch a lot of the various elements of the business. And so the comprehensiveness is absolutely fundamental to that. And what we've done, and that's why it's not just me and it's not just you or any of our team. We have a broad range of people who come in and help facilitate in all of these areas who are experts in their area, whether it's strategic planning or personality assessments or launching an accelerator to move people. Like there's all kinds of different elements that are all led by different people who are part of our collective of facilitators. For the very same reason, none of us carries everything in our briefcase. We need people with different skills and abilities and giftings to see the biggest impact. And so what we feel is our greatest asset is that we've developed this team and these tools and brought them all together in a toolbox that can help touch all of the areas of the company, focus on the ones that maybe need more attention, support and help the ones that don't, but ultimately bring about a great result moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. Bruce, this has been amazing. You're an amazing man with great systems mind and structure in mind. And again, I want to just maybe end on as well something you just said about how, yeah, there might be 4 or 6 of us that are presently the Kingdomize team, but we have friendships and relationships and a collective group of people that we draw from that will go from us to tens to even hundreds of people that we draw from, which is going to be fantastic. And so
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's this comprehensive nature because the kingdom is comprehensive. We want to create comprehensive tools and relationships that can help people along. So that's what we want to do. We want to help you along on your kingdom venture, understanding that God's giving you the vision. He wants to bring that provision, which could be people or resources or systems to help you get to the end result that both you and your team and really the Lord wants you to do. So, Hey, so thanks for spending time with us today. We think it's been profitable, and we wanted to be able to share this more comprehensive approach to what we do, which we call the Kingdom Company Roadmap. And we would love to have a larger dialogue. So get a hold of us on one of our socials. Get a hold of us on our website, info at kingdomizeglobal.com. You can get a hold of us there. Reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you and help your venture become a kingdom success. Take care. Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.